Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hope we are all ready to hear tax issues. I think I've met with some of you as we partner in supporting the government on matters tax collection and revenue administration. So today we will be looking at the compliance issues, the supporting laws that KRA implements with regard to taxation of SACCOs. And as some of the earlier presenters had highlighted, there will be emerging issues, especially following the various new revenue streams that you have pursued and the changes that have happened within the implementation or the management of the SACCOs. We are trying to set up both streams so that we can all go together. But my presentation will cover introduction of SACCOs and the legal framework within which they operate with, special areas of taxation. I will not cover everything because there are those areas that are unique across all taxpayers, but there are those that are very specific to the SACCOs or to the cooperative societies. Then we'll be looking at emerging issues, areas that we have fought all the way to the courts with some of you, and we have had some direction that have been given by the courts with regard to interpretation, with regard to how the taxation should be implemented with regard to the SACCOs. So the first issue is on, of course, this you already know, the laws under which the societies are registered, but I want to highlight section 4, which states why a cooperative society is registered. And this is very important because in some cases a cooperative may operate or run in a manner that does not meet these provisions of section 4. And therefore the commissioner can therefore decide that this is not operating for the benefit of members, and the taxation therefore will be different. So the first thing we look at is to ensure that that society meets the requirement of section 4 of the Cooperative Societies Act before we move to the taxation laws. Before we move to the taxation laws. And as it has been stated, we are partners with regard to supporting revenue generation for Kenya, supporting the government in the implementation of its initiatives, and therefore we would want to learn with you and make improvements with you, and where the law is not clear or is not well understood, you can always sit down and explain or go through the issues that have come up. So the special areas that I will be looking at with regard to the cooperative societies, this is the corporation tax, how we do the computation of corporation tax for SACCOs or the cooperative societies, the provisions of the law, the applicable rates, and where we have exemptions with regard to corporation tax. Then number 2 is on excise duty. This touches on the fees and commissions that you make when you are giving loans or when you are doing the transactions within the SACCO with your members. And this has been a very thorny issue. I think it has gone all the way to the High Court, but we have had some rulings to guide on the taxation of some of these areas. This is because SACCOs are considered as financial institutions, and therefore the services that they offer and the fees that they charge are subject to excise. Then we have pay as one. This applies across, but we have seen some challenges with regard to the some of the payments that are made to the board members or the senior officials where they have not taken suffered tax. I believe most of you are here on per year for some allowance. So those are some of the areas that we have noted, either maybe out of not lack of knowledge or lack of understanding, they have not been subjected to tax. Then we have withholding tax, and this is mostly applicable to dividends that you pay and the interest on member deposits. For those who operate the FOSA, the front office services, you receive deposits for the deposit taking SACCOs. At the end of the day, or at the end of the year, when you declare your dividends, the export should be withheld at 5%. That is the dividends based on the share ownership of the members. And there is an interest that is based on the deposits that members have taken, the withdrawable deposits, which will suffer withholding at the rate of 15%. So I will try to go through each of the taxes, show where there could be issues, and see then how do we deal with them, or how can we go about addressing some of those challenges. And number one, this is the corporation tax. And corporation tax for the societies is governed by Section 19A of the Income Tax Act. Of course, it gives some exemptions because the genesis or the basis of the SACCOs is for people to come together, trade together, and make some money. So the exemption is based on the fact that SACCOs have a unique way of operating because it's money owned by members and then given as loans to members. So for that income, we notice the section does not tax it. But as you continue to look forward, foresight, and you bring in new people who are not members, or you venture into new businesses that are not really the lending to members, then the law factors that and changes the taxation of the same. So to begin with, under Section 19A, the commissioner can, based on the operations, as I was saying, under the Cooperative Societies Act, Section 4, if the commissioner feels you are not operating in line with the Section 4 of the Cooperative Societies Act, then the commissioner can decide to tax that under the normal organization. That is why you allow income, you allow expenses, and then you tax. But for the SACCOs, dividends that are payable to members is what is allowable for tax purposes. And then any interest that has been earned from members is still exempt. But we will look into the specifics of that Section 19A and see where each society should fall and how to go about taxing. It's very important to look at some few definitions because this is an area that we have really struggled with the SACCOs. Number one is the issue of membership. I know initially SACCOs were meant to pool people of similar interests. You form a society like teachers, and you own that society. But in the recent past, we have seen SACCOs bringing in even non-individuals. Right? Maybe you are a teacher, you own a company, that company also joins the SACCO as a member, and that changes the taxation of that particular society. So, designated cooperative society, this is any society that has been registered under the Cooperative Societies Act. And a primary society is a society whose membership is individual persons. So, as long as a SACCO or a society's membership is a natural person, that is what we call a primary society. However, if you bring in a non-individual, then that transitions to what we call a designated society, or more or less like a secondary society, because the ownership, the membership has somebody who is not a natural person. We have the issue of membership, and I said, this of course will go through a process to be registered as a member, either at the inception of the society or after you have gone through the requirements and you qualify to be a member. Then of course dividends and bonuses. Sometimes these are used interchangeably, but they are different depending on the society that we are looking at. For dividends, this is where you get some money or you get some payment based on your share ownership. But bonuses is based on the trading you have had with the SACCO. And this mostly applies to the farmers, societies, I know you have had bonuses in the tech sector and all that. But in most cases, you will find them being used interchangeably. So the legal and regulatory framework, as I have said, is Section 19A of the Income Tax Act, which sets the tax treatment for the designated cooperative societies and the primary societies where SACCOs fall. So we have SACCOs. These are now the savings and credit cooperative societies that are registered under the SACCO Societies Act. So this is where we have most of our SACCOs in, because they receive dividends, they also lend to members, and some of them will operate a front office where they can bring in even members, and where we have those that will operate only the back office services. So Section 19 also distinguishes primary societies that carry on business of savings and credit, and the designated cooperative societies other than the primary SACCOs. So if you look at Section 19, we have Section 19, 2 and 3 that taxes the income of the cooperatives, different from Section 19.4, where most SACCOs fall. So I will try to just do a demonstration of Section 19A and 2 and A and 3. And I've tried to do some mathematics there. As the MC said, I hope you can follow. And here we are looking at how we arrive at the taxable income for the cooperative societies, that is the designated cooperative society, and the designated primary society that does not have the savings and credit functionality. So here we look at the total income. This could be the interest that have been paid by members based on the loans that have been given. Some of you have rental incomes. So we look at the total income. And the first thing we do, as I said, is we disallow operational expenses that are allowable, and we also remove any or disallow the non-operational expenses. These will be things like donations. Sometimes we do a CSR, we donate, but we have not, that donation has not met the requirements. So those are some of the things that we look at. So you disallow some of those, and then you less the dividends that have been issued and interest that have been paid, either to members or to banks where maybe you have borrowed money, and you arrive at the taxable income at 30%. This will apply to designated cooperative societies and primary societies that do not operate savings and credit function. Then we have Section 19.4a, where most of you fall. And this is where I was saying, most of your income, because it has been generated from members, is exempt from tax. So when we are doing the computation for tax, for taxable income, we remove the entire amount that has been earned from members. So we go back to the issue of membership. Membership is very important, such that for you, you have a procedure of how you recruit members, the forms they need to fill, the documents they need to supply for you to qualify as a member. And that's a list that we always ask for. I believe it also submit the same to SASRA. So we need to be very clear who is a member. Because there are some circles where they have a front office, but they still insist for you to operate a front office account, you also need to be a member first. And membership, for you to be a member, you must have a monthly submission of an amount. But suppose it could be 2,000 or 1,000. So anybody who pays that monthly contribution qualifies to be a member. So any interest expense earned from those members is exempt under Section 19A4. What that means is all expenses that are attributable to that exempt income are also not allowed. So the moment you give us the income that has been earned from members, the next question is what expenses have been used to generate that income. Then the second item is we tax 50% of gross income, interest income, earned from elsewhere. This is interest earned from non-members, interest earned from government bonds. If you have invested in the government bond, that interest we only tax 50% of it. And then it also goes without saying, 50% of expenses attributable to that income are exempt from taxes. You can't claim 50% of that income or of those expenses. Then on top of that, you add 100% of your net rental income. So we also need to see the computation of that, where you get this is my gross rental income minus expenses related to the rental income. You add it in. Then any other chargeable income. These will include things like capital gains from disposal of any of the property. You add it in. Any other interest, any other taxable income that could be there, maybe a share dividends received from another entity where you have invested, or any other income there, you also add it in. That's how you arrive at the taxable income for a primary society which carries on business as a credit and savings cooperative society. I want to pause there and ask for any question or any clarification, because this is one of the main areas we have a problem in the circles. Any question? Are we together? Yes? Excise duties are different acts that carry ministers, and here is where some services that are supplied by our taxpayers are subject to excise duty. And this includes, among others, excise duty on fees charged for money transfer services by cellular phone service providers, banks, money transfer agencies, and other financial service providers. That's where SACCOs fall. So for excise duty, it exempts interest as long as it's interest on a loan that does not suffer excise duty. However, any other fee that is attached to that transaction will suffer excise duty. And we have seen misclassification of some of these fees, where you are calling them interest or transfer or interest on something to try to push them under interest. But we know for every product that you have, you already have determined what is the interest rate payable. It's a fixed rate. Any other charge there should suffer excess. That's why we find things like loan processing fees, SMS charges, and many other fees that are attached to some of these products should suffer excess. Then number 4, excellently on other fees charged by financial institutions. So this goes without saying, we may need to define what is a financial institution, and this is found under first schedule part 3 of the executive acts. And we have a list of all the financial institutions there. And these are persons or institutions that have been licensed under the Banking Act. We have the Insurance Act, the Central Bank Act, Microfinance Act, and a SACCO society is done under the SACCO Society Act, where most of you are. And the Act also tries to define what other fees are and what money transfer services include. So other fees, as I had said, this is anything else other than interest that will be charged for the loan product. And this is one of the issues I was saying have been legislated all the way to the High Court, where we got some ruling to try to distinguish between what is interest and what is any other fees. We have the Stima SACCO case. There are 2 rulings on that particular taxpayer. That is a public record, it's available for everyone. And we have many other cases in some of you that have gone different levels. And the money transfer services, this includes services of sending and withdrawing money. And Kaja was here and talked about something about the movement of cash. So that is a new frontier for you guys. We will also be looking into it and advising where the can. Yes, so even as you innovate, there is always where then should tax on how we tax come in some of our innovations. So this issue has been, we have seen changes in law over time. Since it was introduced under Finance Act 2012, there has been many changes, loan fees being dropped, being brought back, the definition of other fees changing over time. Some of these periods are, they are not areas that we can be able to cover now, but it's good to know and see or keep up to date with the various changes. But currently, I think the last change was in Finance Act 2021, where loan-related fees were brought back under other fees and are subject to tax for the current rate of 20%. These are some of the accessible incomes, just to mention a few. By going through the various SACCOs, they will be called different names. Same issue called different or named different. Of course, sometimes we catch up with you under this ledger, then we change it, moves to a different ledger. But I think for the leadership here, it's just to highlight. Those are things we deal with your executives, the CEOs and the accountants. And I believe some of them have aligned. We have had even people coming forward and saying some of these issues, there is no point of going back to the courts. You can resolve them under ADR. And we have done that in many of them. So, as long as you will charge a fee, maybe covering any of these or others, or many others, just ask yourself, is it the cost of the money you have lent out? Because what qualifies as interest is the cost of that money. There will be many other fees attached there, for loan processing, maybe document cost for SMS for releasing the money. Some of you even charge what you call insurance. You are not an underwriter, so you can't put it premium. So there will be an insurance cost. We need to follow up and see, are you collecting on behalf of someone? Are you retaining some? Then we see how to treat that. So at the end of the day, it's to align some of these fees. I know it's income to you, but even if you charge it, maybe at the back of your mind, you need to know if you have a tax implication, and then how do you deal with it? Any question on excise?
Thank you. I would want maybe you to explain to us what we should do, especially for the accessible income, for the costs of, for example, acquiring whatever we are charging on. For example, when you issue a member with an ATM card, we are not the manufacturers of the ATM cards. We buy them from, for example, a bank. And so you see then, we are forced to apply excess duty on the total costs. So how should we go about such? Because I asked somebody and I was told it's not allowed. There is no consideration of costs and any other item that would have cost implication, even loan application forms. We have costs on those loan application forms. So when we charge the member, the entire cost and the premium that we charge on the loan application is applying excess duty.
Maybe what I need to say is that excise is a consumption tax. So your cost may be 1,000 to produce a car. But since you are passing on this to the final person, if the final person who is being charged excise, the 1,000 plus excise. So the circle in this case will only be a collector of the consumption tax that will be paid by the consumer. You collect your 1,000 and you pay for the card or the manufacturer of the card. So the payer of the excise duty is the consumer, the user. Yes, but there will be a scenario where you never charged and we have caught up with you. So now the cost will come from your pocket. So the issue here is at the point of this expense or this excise duty being invoked, that's the point where you need to collect from the consumer and remit to the commission. Any other questions?
Probably I did not understand because I'm looking at the excise. Let's say where you're sharing some fee, you have this service provider that you have a mobile platform, but you collect. Let's say you share 20/80, 50/50. So as a circle, you're supposed to pay excess duty on what? On what is collectible by you or for everything?
I think on that case, we will need to look at how is the transaction executed. Because for example, if you have an agreement with a telco where you charge the SMS, because you hold the money in the customer's account. And we have seen situations where if I request for account balance, the money is deducted by the circle from my account. So you are the person that will is collected. So if the charge for an SMS is 10 shillings, it's 10 shillings plus excise. So in that point, you are the collector of excise. Then you share the 10 shillings with the telecommunication. So the excise in this issue will be accounted for by you because it's a collection point. There is no claiming it or Safaricom or whoever telco will go there and charge you excise again. No, the excise will not be applicable at the second level because at the second level it's only a revenue sharing agreement. And there is also a ruling with regard to that. So the issue here is who is collecting the money. The circle. Then you collect the excise, remit to the commissioner, then the 10 shillings you share with the helper. Any other question? If there are no more questions on excise, we can proceed to the other two taxes. And these are simple, as I said. For PS1, this mostly affects you, the board members, and the leadership of the circles. Because this is where we have seen either committee allowances have not suffered PS1 or some payments, maybe per year, or some payments that have been done to the members. They need to be properly accounted so that at the end of the day, that's an income to you as the board member or as the senior leadership of the circle. So that issue needs to be very well documented. Is it an investment? And maybe a member traveled from a country to Nairobi for a meeting and then they were reimbursed. Is it an investment? Is it an allowance? So that needs to be well documented, well clearly supported with documentation so that we clearly know where to put it. Is it taxable under paying or is it an investment? Then withholding income tax. This is another area. I don't know, maybe it's an understanding issue or it's, I don't know how to put it. Where we have seen, even in the way your accounts have been maintained, both dividends and interest payable has been lumped in one account or in one level, such that it's not very easy to distinguish between what is dividend and what is interest. And as I said, dividends is what a member has been paid based on their share ownership in the circle. But interest, I operate a front office account, I open a savings account with you, I deposit my money there. At the end of the year, you declare there is money to be paid for those who have deposited money with us, or even non-members, for those who operate the front office accounts. So, as long as it's interest, that should suffer withholding at 15%. But for dividends, withholding tax is at 5%. So this goes to maybe the issue of systems that we are talking about, the issue of data, and even the way you have configured your accounts, so that we are very clear which transactions are which, and then which tax should they suffer. We talked about risk management earlier, and compliance is an issue of risk management, because sometimes you could forego paying tax now. I come to your institutions 3 years from now, the tax that I will be demanding would be double or would have grown. So financial risks with regard to taxes, the best time is to address them now, not tomorrow. Because tomorrow there will be penalties, there will be interest on it, and the government really needs this money. That's why I started by saying we are partners in building Kenya. So we need to see how best to support each other today. Measure what after now. So some of the issues, as I highlighted, is because SACCOs are unique organizations. They are very unique organizations. That's why they even have a whole section under 19A on how to tax them. And because of this uniqueness, there are risks that are involved. I think for us to do the accounts, we need to do accounts for SACCOs. I don't remember doing that. So some of these things are things you learn when you are on the job. And most of the issues we have seen, it's maybe because of the background of our accounting. It's a this kind of unique accounting for the SACCOs. So some of the risks we have seen and compliance risks with regard to SACCOs is the misclassification of income between members and non-members. This is very key. You would rather even run two accounts or two systems where we can see this is the income earned from members and this is income earned from non-members. You are all operate within that sphere. Then number two is failure to apportion expenses correctly. Your operating expenses, as I said, we still need to be apportioned depending on where you fall. You fall under section 19A4. We need to know which expenses relate to the income that is exempt. Then even the income that is not exempt, we have the 50% of the expenses that we need to disallow. So that issue needs to be very well documented and addressed. The other issue is delayed or omitted remittances of taxes. This especially with PAS1, withholding tax and excise. Some of you members will also offer services to the SACCO as consultants or in any other capacity. Those professional services, withholding tax needs to be implemented, withholding done, and remitted to the Commission. We also have the systems that you operate, the systems that you run, the core systems. Some of them are supplied by non-Kenyans, and others are supplied locally. So any payments to such providers, withholding tax should also start. Some of you are also doing buildings, construction. You support us, or you support the economy in terms of growth, in terms of buildings, and in terms of even the acquisition of properties here and there. So when you are doing such buildings, ensure that the withholding tax has been implemented on all payments to your contractors and your service providers. We have also seen a situation where some of you are operating or you are doing other businesses. I don't know if it's not a requirement or it's not expected for a SACCO to do like the issue of the land. I believe that was separated, it needs to be separated. But it doesn't need to, you don't need to use the members' deposits, you need to have a fund for that. So in case you are in that space, also ensure that the purchases, the expenses incurred in the development of that land, partitioning, all that is well documented. So that any sale you do, you will be able to match the sale and related expenses. Because yes, you divide 100 acres, you subdivide, not all plots will be sold in money. So we need to approve those expenses and apportion them based on the plots that have been sold in a year. Misclassification of incomes, or accessible incomes, these I have already mentioned, where we find incomes that are subject to excise being misclassified as interest, and therefore no excise duty was charged. And this is where I was saying, in case we find an income has been misclassified and you didn't collect excise from the final consumer, it's you to bear the cost. And all these costs, remember, they will go to reducing your dividend payouts to your members. So it's good to address the issues now before it shows up years after and they are demanding the amount plus penalties and interest. Then there is the issue of inadequate documentation and record keeping. And here, especially with the introduction of videos, remember for starting 1st January 2025, any expense that has been claimed needs to be supported by an electronic invoice. So this is something that you need to be very cautious about, because the first starting point will be to disallow any expense that is not supported, as long as it's not under the exemption items. So with regard to documentation, ensure at least all your documents are in order, and they can be availed if the commissioner requests them. Expansion into commercial activities. This is both a risk and an opportunity for you. As long as it's an opportunity that is helping the server to grow and make money, it will be an opportunity. But the problem we have seen is maybe you saw the opportunity but you forgot to consider the tax implication. And this is one of the biggest areas, especially with regard to foresight. It was an expansion strategy where we decided, let's bring in even members who are not necessarily individuals. Or you open a front office account, but for you to qualify for that, you also need to be a member. So you bring in non-individuals. So that changes the dynamics. But what we have noted is most of you did not address that, or you did not foresee the tax implication with regard to that. So even as you expand, it is good. It's always good to maybe question, or at the back of your mind ask what is the tax implication of some of these things. And KRA is well represented across the country. There is no harm in engaging the KRA officers who are available in the area to maybe guide on some of these things. I want to do is what is the implication. And we have seen that with regard to even some of the acquisitions we have seen in the financial services and some of the investments. So that as you get into this new venture, you are going there, you are open your eyes wide open. So the last issue here is on governance and fraud. These I don't need to belabor, but we have seen that in the recent, in our recent papers with regard to one of our taxpayers. So this is also an area that we need to be aligned. Yes, it may look far-fetched, but sometimes it's our money, because we are also members of this house. It's our monies that get lost in the process. So we, you guys as the leadership, as Speaker said, your members have entrusted you to go to those commissions and safeguard their interests, their money, their hard-earned money. So if a circle collapses, it collapses with someone's years and years of savings. So we hope, as you sit in those positions, you will safeguard our money. True. Chairman, they need to agree. Is it true? We use a grant our money. Yes. So maybe a recommendation on how to deal with some of these things, because some of them could have been done erroneously or out of lack of full information. Is we are requesting, if you do a tax health check and you feel maybe there is an issue you have been treating the wrong way, you can always do a self-disclosure, come to the commissioner and ask for a quick review on a certain issue, and we will be able to address that before maybe an audit is done or a review is done, so that moving forward, you move forward with the full knowledge that at at least this issue that we have been treating in a certain way that is not very clear, we have addressed it correctly. And most of you, I believe, some of you have been audited. And of course, the financial implication in some cases is not small. So before things get out of hand and you feel genuinely there is an issue you cannot treat it correctly, you can always approach our offices. Those of you who are in large taxpayers' office, you will find me. And those of you who are domiciled elsewhere, you will find our head officers to be able to address your issues and deal with them correctly. I'm done. Unless we have any questions.
When we invite you, they said at a cost.
Of course, there will be a cost. Because if the tax was not paid, we have to collect.
And the consultation cost?
Consultation cost, there is none. That one we offer for free. We are government. We don't charge. But another issue, yes, you go for consultations elsewhere, and it's at a cost, and sometimes we have found you being misled. So you can go for the professional consultation, but also you can confirm with us free of charge.
Yeah, Mwalimu, question. It's very good explanation, and we are supposed to comply because it's a government with us and us as leaders. But in the future, I don't know what can be done because even the circles and the members might feel very much stress. One, we are teacher-based circles. And all the teachers are deducted from their salaries, pay as you are. So that little they say is a sign for credit like that the circle to exist. And then you have said you don't tax the interest on the loans. But then you want something from the interest on the deposits as at the end of the year your books. Then our question is why are these people paid? We are deducted, they are still being deducted. So our plea is that if in the future you could also think and on how to save the Kenyans. Two, if it is insurance, for example, the loan guards want the deposit in care of the members' deposits through mitigating and sharing the risks. That's why they are getting money to pay for the insurance. Then, and the insurance institutions also they pay tax. Then why should you follow this money, which actually the members, the circle is collecting as insurance fee for their member deposits to be secured in case of demise or what? And if the money goes to the insurance company, also is supposed to pay the insurance. So we feel that please, if you could moderate and as we learn and adopt the new changes, so many policies and taxation, then we can be stable. Otherwise, we shall be all in a problem. And conclusion two, the many taxation issues actually might be members not benefiting rightfully from their investment. Because whatever they are doing is tax everywhere. You come to the force. Everybody is supposed to be a member. Whether a teacher, whether a business person, has to pay is always a member. And has paid membership fees. So I don't know how you can treat these people as people outside as one of members of the circle. And they are supposed to benefit. And you are told as leaders of the circle, we should not categorize members the member should be. There is no class A, there is no class B, and they are all members. So whatever need to they do, I think, even when you handle us, because you are going to handle us, you have actually thanks feeling that these are people who belong to this country, their taxation is an idea, and it needs actually some sympathy and fair treatment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that question. And as I said, some of these things it's an issue of clarity. Because, for example, the money that is paid, we don't tax the money that has been put in, or taxation does not tax the money the teacher has saved. It is the return, the money that comes back. If you have saved, for example, $1 million, and at the end of the year, your $1 million has earned you 50,000. That is an additional income. So that is what is being taxed. That's on your question number one. And that applies even when you put the money in the bank. If the money is still in the bank, it will still suffer some tax. The additional amount that you have money. Even when you go to the government and you buy bonds, treasury bills, treasury bonds, whatever money they will pay you on top is what suffers tax, not the savings. The savings are intact and they will not be taxed. Then number two, the issue of members, non-members, that comes from you. When we come and we find you have a limited company, you have churches, you have several groups, some of you are saying, these are supposed, these are unforced, they are not members. But when you look at your Bible, some of you, for you to be able to open an account, a FOSA account, you must register it. And as I said, they are all in this level. What we have also tried is they are told for you to open a FOSA, you need to be a member. So that's where the issue of members and non-members comes in. But for us to look at who is a member and what qualifies you to be a member. If you are an individual, if you are a member, of course the condition in that particular case changes. And of course, as you have said, some of these things is an issue of the law maybe as crafted then was to look at this issue differently. So if maybe the SACCOs feel there's an issue that needs to be addressed, of course you as Kenyans can do your petition through the budget process and something can be changed or introduced or removed. And as I showed you under the Excise Duty Act, I think every year there is always a change in regard to excise. Where does it fall? What is taxed? What is not taxed? Then on the other issue on insurance, I said this is treated differently depending on how your operations start. You may have gotten into an argument with CIC that for our loans, you are the insurer. So we charge you a fee from every member, collecting that and pushing it to CIC direct. That will not have a problem because you are a collector of the premium CIC. But in a situation where we find you have a 10% insurance fee, then you pass on to CIC a portion of it, there is a problem. You are not another. So there is no way the portion you are paying can be termed as a premium. That will be a fee that should suffer excess. But if the whole amount moves to another item, then they are okay. So it's dependent on the arrangements you have.
Now, two issues there now. One is we are talking about amendment, right? And when you go to the normal operations, and economic climate at which you are operating. A group can be a member. A group. You have a problem with that. A group is a member. And two. So that one. Then the other issue is to deal with insurance. But I think you know, because now, even if you are collecting money for the insurance, you cannot be so strict because now the insurance will pay their demand on your own. So, in case whatever is left, let me tell you, in case there is something left, you should not look at it as an income of the circle. Because by January, the demands are high, insurance cover of the loans, depending on the growth. So to say that we collect and we forward everything, there's nothing left, and we don't know what they are doing, and the Lord is growing that year. You see now, it's a total confusion. I believe if it is possible, thank you.
I think about, you see, for us, taxation is on an annual basis. And that's where we come to give you the insurance. But we look at the accounting period for the SAP. So whatever goes to the next year, you see, we're already planning for next year. So we should be looking at what amount you collect this year to cover the loans or to cover for the premium for the loan book for this. Then we can discuss about the effect on a case by case basis. And that will move more closely to what he asked about the excise with regard to the collection where the revenue is being shared. Then we see under that payment that you have how best we will the issue.
Thank you for that, Asante sana. The others will be visiting you individually. We are happy for that presentation, Dave, and we want to thank the audience for engaging you. Thank you so very much. We can give Dave a round of applause for that presentation. Thank you so very much.